Well, hello once again all my YouTube browsers, and a very special welcome back to my very valuable subscribers of my classic dirt bike TV channel who continue to support my content as we head towards the 10,000 subscriber total. Now hopefully in the coming weeks I'll be able to bring you more brand new material here on my channel, although as yet there are very little in the way of classic and vintage events scheduled to run here in the UK, but hopefully this will change very soon. Now until then, let's take a look at another machine I came across at the 2020 Scottish Motorcycle Show. So let's just take a quick look at Gary Britton's 1973 TM250K Suzuki. Now straight away you can see that this is not one of those shiny concourse race bikes, and it's certainly no garage queen either, but this is Gary Britton's current race machine, which is used almost daily. Now you've also probably guessed that this is not a fully original bike from 1973, just in case any of my eagle-eyed YouTubers were to spot a few non-original fixings while they're watching. Now these TM Suzukis were of course the models prior to Suzuki changing the TMs to the newer RM range, which as you know were much more popular and slightly quicker than these older TM bikes. Now these 1973 TM250Ks were nicknamed the Champion because of the reference to the great Joël Robert, who rode these type of 250 Suzukis to 3 current world titles in 1970, 71 and 1972. But back in their heyday, these TM250s were very popular and sold in huge numbers, not just here in the UK but in Europe and across the pond in the USA. Now the engine was a single cylinder 2-stroke motor and was basically based around the old TS 250 road and trail bike of its day, but it was a decent little power plant for a motocross 250 and had a 5-speed gearbox and of course Suzuki's CCI automatic oil lubrication system. Now because these engines had the CCI automatic oil lubrication, you didn't need to pre-mix the fuel, you just had to add regular gas to the tank and then keep the separate oil tank topped up and the little oil pump lubed all the important parts of the motor. Although as these engines got older, many riders did away with the oil pump and then just added premix to the gas tank, which more or less still did the same job. Now these TM250 forks were just your basic telescopic oil damped affairs, and to be truthful, they were not top of the range when it came to off-road suspension systems, although they could be improved if you were willing to experiment with heavier springs and different weights of oils. But you have to remember that this was the early 1970s and this was still the basic technology of its day. As you would expect, drum brakes for 1973, and this single leading shoe brake was still good enough to retard the inertia of what was a reasonably light little bike coming in at a dry weight of around 220 pounds. Now the rear shocks on Gary's bike are once again not the originals, as these are a pair of replacement Hagen classic shocks, which to me look extremely long for this little bike, although maybe Gary has just fitted them this length for a specific reason. Now a drum brake again on the rear of this 73 TM, although these nice alloy wheels are certainly period correct for this particular model. Now, I'd have been very surprised if this bike still had its original exhaust system after 47 years, and as you can see, the original Suzuki item has been replaced with this Pro-Form Racing expansion chamber, which is more or less a straight bolt-on replacement for the Suzuki original, and there's quite a nice snap, crackle and pop from this PFR race pipe when that little 250 Suzuki two-stroke motor gets fired up. Now, as I remember, these 73 250Ks had a steel fuel tank at the time which held around, I think it was 2.4 gallons of gas, and if you were still using the separate CCI oil lubrication system, the little plastic storage tank also held about 1.3 pints of two-stroke oil. But these handlebars, levers and grips are again replacements for the Suzuki originals, which are long gone now because of the bike's age. But despite the non-original parts fitted to this bike, it's still quite a nice example of one of these older TM Suzuki 250s. And let's face it, this is another of those bikes that you almost never see at a vintage or classic off-road event in this modern day. But for me personally, this is another one of those racing classics, even although these rear shocks look totally wrong on the back of this bike. But nevertheless, as I said earlier, this is no show bike or garage queen. It's a proper everyday race bike that Gary uses whenever he can. But back in their heyday, these TM250s were good little off-roaders with a decent chassis, a perky two-stroke motor, and they also paved the way for the forthcoming RM Suzuki series of bikes that followed them. So that's a very brief look at Gary Britton's 1973 Suzuki TM250K. Now, in the coming weeks, I hope to add more vintage off-road classics to my channel, and if you like what you see here, then please subscribe to see more precious metal here on Classic Dirt Bike TV. This video was brought to you in association with Wealthsport, the world's #1 supplier for all your off-road, sports and leisure wear. Just visit their online website at wealthsport.com for more details.